All right, so I had completed this over like 2 sittings while working. It probably took me maybe about like an hour, 2 hours or so to get everything all nice and set up. Now, I was really free forming with these coils. Look at a bunch of examples. All I was doing, like I showed you guys in the first video, was making different coil shapes, different pieces of clay, and then applying pressure as I went ahead and added them in. As I went up the sides, I really went in and I kind of like pushed in my shapes each individually to form the bowl. You're gonna wanna make sure that you have a really nice edge to your bowl. You're gonna wanna go in with a paintbrush, you're gonna wanna smooth it up a little bit, and of course I forgot my paintbrush again. You're gonna wanna go in with your paintbrush and some water. Make sure you get all of the edges nice and smooth. Remember, this is gonna be an item that you're actually going to be using, if you would like to. So you wanna make sure that everything's nice and smooth around the edges, because you don't really wanna go in and use a bowl and then have some pointy edges. That's not gonna be all that great. So you guys want to make sure as you're constructing these that everything is really pushed in. And then before we go ahead and we start to add more clay, we're going to go in and we're just going to kind of smush everything together. Now you want to do this in an organized fashion. You don't want to just go wild and start smushing. Just kind of nice compressions going down, and you'll start to see that the clay is gonna form together a little bit. Now, this is gonna help it so that there's not gonna be very many spaces to fill in once we start adding extra clay on. So I'm trying to fill in and morph together everything really nicely. Now, even though I have slip on here, squishing it together on the inside is gonna really, really help to form these coils nice and together. So you're gonna wanna go around the whole thing. Make sure that you are holding the outside because you don't want the bowl to break on you. And just try to make sure that everything's pushed together as best you can. I might start in one area, kind of work your way. I just kind of started pushing down on it so I could show you guys the technique. So look at the samples, take a look at the PowerPoint that I attached. It also shows you step by step, not in video form, how to go ahead and make these, but you could see I'm really going in and I'm compressing these. I would not go out all the way till the edge of this, and if you guys even want to make sure your edge is straight and not flowy like this, that's fine too. Once I smush everything together the best I can, I'm then gonna go in with some extra clay. Really, really soft, fresh clay. And I wanna just go in small pieces at a time. You don't wanna go in and use a big chunk of clay because then you're gonna risk getting air bubbles in there. And you want enough clay so that you're gonna be able to even everything out. So I'm just going in, and hopefully you could see there how it's starting to get smooth. Just a little piece. I'm gonna really compress it in, and then I'm gonna smooth it. Now, I really recommend doing this with your fingers because you can get a really nice smooth surface. And you could really feel also what level the clay is at. if you do have any like small holes where you could see through to the styrofoam, don't just push clay into it. More create like a little flat pancake piece so that you're not pushing through and you still do have that design. But you're gonna wanna go in and you're gonna wanna do this to the entire thing. So step one is to use your clay and either your slip or your water to get your designs made, to really put everything together. Spend a few hours on it, play around with different designs, get creative. We talked about radial balance, how it could start in the middle and work its way out in an even fashion. We talked about a little bit more abstract, organic shapes, which is kind of what I'm doing with this. And this is very similar to some of the coil work we're going to be attaching onto our Jomon pottery pieces. If you're watching this video in the future and we're not doing Jomon pottery, we were at one point. So I'm just smoothing that in. And that's what it's starting to look like inside. Now, another thing I want to address is the edges. So you want to make sure, especially, you know, if you don't have like a straight edge on this with your coils, that you're going in and you're really making sure you pay attention to smoothing it in to match the edge that you have. So I don't want to go over it. I don't want to like smooth over it and under it. I want to go directly up right to there. Smooth it into the top a little bit. And then smooth it over. So you're gonna do this throughout the entire bowl. And this is how you're gonna get your really nice smooth bowl. I'm just taking little pieces, little flat pancake pieces, compressing them in and smoothing them over. Now these come out really, really beautiful once they, you know, dry out a little bit and we're ready to pop them out of their form. But you want to make sure that you get the inside super, super smooth. The inside and also the edges. Otherwise, it's not going to be a functional form. And that is, you know, part of the assignment, part of what we're going for is having that nice functional form, that nice smooth form. So you don't want to see like any big like lumps, bumps, things like that. And make sure that you're really like addressing your edges really nicely. Going in, you could see how I'm just going up to that little spot and then I'm smoothing it over, down. So you don't want to use too much clay, but you don't want to use not enough that you're not evening everything out. Now, when you were creating these, you should have been using coil pieces that were fairly even, like I said in the first video, so that you don't run into too many problems like that. It's going to take a little while to kind of like work it in, flatten some clay, really push it in, compress it in, get rid of any risk of those air pockets in there. Now, you don't want to let these dry right away. The reason being is we're attaching, you know, fresh clay over coiled clay. And as it dries, we want to make sure that it all dries at the same rate. So I'm going to recommend still putting like a very slightly damp paper towel over the top of these. And your plastic, once you're all done, you know, adding your clay. And then we're gonna gradually let them dry out nice and slow with some plastic over them. And they will eventually kind of pop out of their form on their own. I would wait until you bring it into school to fully pop it out because they're gonna be very, very fragile until they go through the kiln. And I don't want you guys spending all this time on these really beautiful bowls, you know, just to have it, you know, go ahead and crack on you. So we wanna make sure that we let them dry slow, and we wanna make sure that we really keep them in these forms, even, you know, how tempting it might be, until we bring them back to the school and have a nice shelf we could pop them out and rest them on. And as it dries, you know, slowly, once you're done adding all the clay, you guys will notice that it's gonna kind of just pop out on its own. It'll start to separate a little bit, but use this to keep it in. And you can see just how smooth it's getting inside. If you notice you're getting any cracking or it's unleveled, just add a little bit of extra clay in there. And you should be all good. So I'm gonna continue with this, but I hope you guys get the idea of smoothing. That's the one side I still need to continue to smooth. And that's what it looks like when it's all smoothed up, making sure that the edges are still really nice, and we could always go in with a paintbrush and smooth those up a little bit more. So this is what we're going for in step 2, which is the final step before drying these out nice and slow.